Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to the Water and Sewer Utility Committee meeting on Thursday, March 13th, 2025. We're here a few minutes late starting, and I apologize for that, but we'll call the order of business, call the meeting to order, and can I get an approval of agenda? Moved by Councilor Matart, second by Mayor Brown. Any declarations of conflict of interest?
Hearing none.
Hearing none. We'll go to adoption of the previous draft minutes of February 13th, 2025.
Mr. Chair, just on the approval of the agenda, are we going to leave 6B there?
It would be 8, section 8, I think.
Under the closed session?
Yeah, it'll be under the closed session. Yeah.
Okay,
This is different.
thank you. So the well field protection is,
Just a different thing.
oh, perfect. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Moved?
Moved by Mayor Brown, second by Councilor Matart. Any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, we'll drop down to discussions reports. Number 6 for Joshua, please.
Perfect, thank you, Chair. So this first report here is for 511 Brackley Point Road. It's a request for service. The purpose of this here is to bring it to committee that we did receive a request from 511 Brackley Point Road. In particular, it's the Fair Isle Motel. So we had received this request, 511 Brackley Point Road. The Fair Isle Motel is proposing a 13-unit expansion. At this time, they're seeking to connect to city water. The section of pipe goes right along the front of the property. If so approved or decided by committee to move to council, all costs for the development would be borne by the property owner. And the customer would be charged a 25% surcharge for service outside of the city. So we're looking for committee's recommendation to move this forward to council.
Discussion on
I
this?
have a question,
Sure.
Chair. So last night, we also discussed another property out in that area with for the provincial government who's looking to do the affordable housing.
Mhm.
And I think we were raising some concerns about expansion. And I think we approved like stage 1 of that project. But
Fine,
then
yeah.
what we would come back and review on each stage. Do we have some of the same concerns with this particular is it 13 unit, you said? 13 additional units?
Yes, for the motel, yeah.
I'm just trying to be consistent on the things that we're discussing on that particular property against this particular property or anything else, so I'm just, Josh, maybe, I don't know if you recall some of that discussion, but is there anything that we should be mindful of in regard to the comments that were made and some hesitations around the infrastructure and things that we need to do in that area?
Thank you for that. I mean, we did have concerns by council the other night. Council made a decision years ago for every person that asks for water, rather than staff or administration saying yes, it would come to council for a discussion. So this is typical following, any years that we've been on council for the water and sewer, it would come here and we'd see what we could do. So your question would be the water capacity. If this continues quite a bit, where are we going? Do we have enough water service to be able to, fulfill these requests? So Josh, I guess it comes down to you in the questions of how is our capacity to administer to some of these requests.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair and Councilor Matart. It is a great question, and I was there at council the evening we discussed the application from the province. And it does come down to the particular application at the particular time. When we do review it, this one, I don't foresee any issues. It is along that Brackley line, so it is coming from a different well field than what our Miltonville one is. It's kind of irrelevant, I guess, but it is from two different areas. This one would be a significantly less requirement for water compared to the development that they are seeking out in Miltonville Park. That is, I believe it was a 60 unit development there with potential into the future, but each application, we do look at the date and time, it's received, and we compare that against the capacity we have in the system. I know that, in Milton Vale Park, there's an agreement in place that they are allotted, so much water, within, that was part of the agreement in creating the well field out in Milton Vale. So I do believe with that development in that side of the city, that becomes closer to what their agreement is for water supply. It's still within capacity, but it does come to a point where when we do review these, if there was a capacity issue, we would look at what kind of expansions or developments would be required to satisfy that need. If it did come to a point where we didn't have the capacity, we would not recommend moving forward, because we don't want to do something that endangers our existing customers and kind of use of our water. But at this time, there's sufficient water for this request, absolutely. And we do review each one case by case, so as they do come through, it's not a, we'll approve one and then you can do anything down the road. We always come back, and if they do anything different, or if they change their proposed plan, then we review that as well, and that could change the outcome of things.
Okay, that satisfies my questions, Chair, thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, it's Fair Isle Hump Motel, application, the water source resolution that we passed the other night was for Milton Vale. There are Milton Vale Park, correct?
Correct.
And our water lines running through that area. So the issue out in Brackley is that they're all in wells, right?
Primarily.
So why can't we sit down with Brackley, the community of Brackley, and say, why don't you become part of our system? That was the discussion the other night. Is that something, Richard, your director, you have considered, or anyone in the department?
So through the chair, to the mayor, it is something that we have looked at a high level. I know that, Richard in his previous role has very likely had discussions, with the mayors or municipalities. It is something we should kind of bring to light, again, and kind of rehash those conversations just to see what it looks like, because we are all drawing from the same water source. It is an underground aquifer, and it does move very similar to an above ground river. So the water in one location eventually is the water in another location. So it is very important that we protect it from all angles, and having a central system can be one of the better ways to do it, because you're in control of how many wells are there and monitoring them. Individual wells are great, and it comes down to a serviceability issue. Whereas there's a tremendous amount of infrastructure, so if we within the city we have the infrastructure in place to go and offer the same level of service to a Brackley, a Suffolk, a Milton Vale Park. It would be a huge undertaking, and you'd have to have buy-in from those communities. I do see there would be value there. It would be one of the greater ways of ensuring protection for the water. Just that there's fewer wells, there's fewer issues that could arise from that. But it does come down to a cost point, a serviceability, and buy-in from the communities.
So
We can
Josh,
bring that back.
You're gonna, if this goes ahead, like last night, we're gonna extend a line to Fair Isle Motel, right?
Absolutely, so there'd be a
They're not gonna
lateral
be
service
sending out
line.
pails of water.
Yeah.
And that's their water.
Yep.
Same with the development out in Milton Vale, right?
For
And-
clarification, just for a second, like you say, extend a water line. We're not extending a water line. There's a water line going from the Brackley well right to Charlottetown, right?
Yes,
Same as Milton
exactly.
Vale. So it'll just be a tap in.
And that's for Milton Vale too.
Exactly, yeah, so there'll be a lateral line, so our main goes within a relative proximity to the location. And they'll just have a tap off the side, and that'll provide them service.
So
It
that's
wouldn't be an extension of a main or anything substantial.
That's the reason I raised the point.
Yeah.
Are we extending a line?
It's a copper line into it, right?
No, I know that. This is just for clarification. So the line's there, so what's the additional infrastructure capital cost to the city if the line's already there and they're just branching off, unless we wanna get other customers that can't get access to that line, so we would have to do our own branch off, correct?
Yep, so, with requests such as these, the cost is basically zero, or is zero to the city. It's borne by the developer or the owner.
Right.
And that's regardless if it's a, if it's a 2-inch line or if they need something, more significant. But if we were to offer, per se, service to the entire community of, let's say,
Water,
Miltonville
wastewater.
Park or Suffolk or Brackley, that would involve water mains, because not every residence is situated
And stations.
along where the mains are, right? Exactly, so
Yeah.
it is, like you say, like a regional water utility or water and sewer utility. That would be more what you would be looking at there, but with these requests, typically you only get them if they're right on the main. Like if it's crossing in front of their house, those are the
Right.
only individuals who see that as feasible.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
cause the cost to do that is more reasonable than if they had to do an entire new well pump system.
Yeah. Again, the reason I make the point, because Councillor Matar is the chair of Strategic Priorities, Communication, Intergovernmental Cooperation. Councillor Duran is chair of Water and Wastewater. We're talking about this regional utility. We need to get information, that's the data we need. What's gonna be the capital cost to make this utility work? If you spread it out to Brackley, Cornwall, Stratford, what's gonna be the cost? And I think that's what we have to start working on to make a solid case. So I'm supporting this, but going forward, we need to have a parallel plan or a strategy to bring this all together into a regional water and wastewater utility.
Yeah, good point. I mean, there's gotta be more than just us coming out with a line, right? There's gotta be the province and the federal government both online for infrastructure, protecting well fields, all this stuff.
Yeah.
So if everybody has a well everywhere, like, it's gonna get contaminated at some point, right? So that's why, this regional type of
Utility.
collaboration of everybody kind of working together for the greater good has to come from somewhere, right?
Like what we heard the other night on Ralden Avenue, some of the neighbors said that my well was polluted, right? Well, that well was polluted when it was under the Sherwood system because they're on their own well.
That's right.
Now they're on a closed system, owned, operated, maintained, financed by the city of Charlottetown Water and Wastewater Utility. So that gives protection, right? And it also gives access during severe storms like Fiona. Our water and wastewater was still operating, but if you lived in Brackley, you were going down to the river or building an outhouse to take care of your needs. We get a system that is very good that we can expand on. And that's why I'm saying, like, we can talk about it, Mr. Chair, but let's get this moving. I think we need the data from our department or utility, and how can we work cooperatively? And I think with the chair here, strategic priorities, everything's gelling together.
So I'll move it forward.
Second?
Second, great. We did discuss this the other night.
Yeah.
And it would be good for, Councilor Matar's committee to try to get some information or somebody to sit down, right? Like, from the provincial government to start.
Right.
I mean, we discussed this.
And there is some hesitation from members of council about this regional utility, but we have to start charting out our own destiny, instead of waiting for someone to put us all together, amalgamate us for services, whether it's water, wastewater, police. We can start doing this. Thank you, sir.
Be great. Thank you. So moved on to 6B, Wellfield Protection Plan. Gosh.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is basically provide a little bit of information on what we have in place for wellfield protection. And then I'll just read through the details. Amended or attached to it, I should say, is a development plan that we had created, I believe in 2016. And for the most part, we have actioned or put into action, the recommendations within that report for protection of our well fields. So the water and sewer utility recognizes the significance of protecting Charlottetown's water sources. Currently, Charlottetown sources water from 4 well fields located in Miltonville Park, Brackley, Union, and Suffolk. The 4 well fields draw from 2 particular watersheds, the Winter River watershed and the Coles Creek watershed. Whereas the well fields are situated outside of city boundaries, one of the best methods of protecting these source waters is to own and monitor strategic parcels of land. In particular, these lands should be located within the wellfield protection zones. These zones are within the document attached to this. The water and sewer utility has entertained and will continue to entertain opportunities to acquire additional lands located within the wellfield protection zones. Typically, when entertaining a land acquisition, the utility would seek a land valuation. This is to provide or obtain an estimate of the fair market value of the particular parcel. To be fiscally responsible, excuse me, the utility would use this valuation to negotiate a fair purchase price with the landowner. Unfortunately, not all negotiations are successful, although the utility does desire control of the lands for wellfield protection. The land acquisition may not move forward. In addition to lands acquisitions, there could be capital projects pertaining to wellfield protection, particularly monitoring situations that could be entertained for funding within this budget item. So it's a fairly substantial document, and I'm sure that most committee members have seen it before, but it primarily details the kind of the lay of the land around each well field and how drainage works, and it identifies particular parcels. And at that time, I do believe their owners to dictate which lands were more significant in a situation of contamination. So it gave variable times of if there was contamination, how long it would take to affect the source waters. And that is a guiding principle we have used in looking and seeking after certain properties. Closer to the back, one of the appendixes, page pretty well 48. There are 4 separate maps, 3 maps, for the particular well fields. So the first one does have our Brackley and Union, and it dictates several different details on there. We do have a 250-day zone travel boundary, a 5-year zone travel boundary, and a 25-year zone travel boundary. So those are the approximated areas that if there was contamination, how long it would take the particular time, 25, 5, and 250 days. As well, there's a broader area, which are the protection zones. And that encompasses a little more of the catchment area. So if there was contamination within those zones, it would just take a little bit longer than what they have here shown for let's say the 25 or 5-year contamination. That is one of the guiding principles of areas we keep a closer eye on for when properties become available. If it's fiscally responsible for the utility to get those lands and ensure their safe use, then that's what we are seeking to do and have sought to do. As well, on the next page, we do have the Suffolk well field, and then on the third one, we do have the Miltonville area. So they do encompass larger catchment areas, and they dictate which parcels we're really seeking, and then we can keep an eye if they do come available.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
Sure.
To the chair, and through to the manager, if I was to ask you which wellfield area you felt was at most risk, what would that be at this point in time?
Through the chair to Councilor Matart, that is a great question, and I don't believe I would have a direct answer at this time. Prior to Miltonville, all the water was sourced through the well fields in the, I don't misspeak here. Winter River watershed. So in that instance, we would be looking at the Suffolk, Brackley Union. Since we did diversify into another watershed with Milton Vale, it did provide greater protection in the event of contamination. But whereas the 3 well fields there's 3 of the 4 well fields under one watershed, I would at this time lean towards that being a priority. 2 of them are very closely situated, that's the Brackley and Union. So at first glance, that's the answer I'd be able to
Okay,
provide.
thank you. Mr. Chair, just a second question to that. So then what is the biggest concern or risk of contamination? Like, what source of contamination would we be concerned about in those areas?
Absolutely. So through the chair to Councilor Matard, it really is petroleum contamination, could be pesticide contamination, anything that would degrade the water quality to a point of non-consumption. So that is a very broad stroke, because I don't want to downplay any of the particular contaminants that could be there. But particularly, if we look at human activity, it would be pesticides and petroleum products is what we would be seeking to limit.
So like farming and so. So that would be our biggest concern around that.
Absolutely. If there was a petroleum spill, that'd be a major incident, especially if it went unreported, unmediated, or remediated. Typically, it's like an oil spill at your house. If you act quick and you're honest about it, we can clean that up. Not we particularly, but
So from the perspective of petroleum, one would assume that would be an incident would occur that may cause that. However, farming in a particular area is known and likely a practice that has been there or continues to be there. So in that sense, that's more known to us in the sense of that risk being presented on an annual basis.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
correct.
I'm just trying to understand where the risks lie and some of the potential for the need of protection of well fields in these areas. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, just to follow up. I'm not sure if you recall, but the Walkerton strategy, a tragedy that had happened back in 2000. The water was infected because of its proximity to I think a pig farm. But the follow-up from that, because I think 7 people died, 2,300 became ill. And I know we had a water here in 2000. That was during the election of 2000, municipal election, because of some concerns. But Josh, what it said in the inquiry that took place, that protecting the well field is very important, but we're constantly testing and monitoring our water, correct?
Correct.
That's ongoing all the time. So if there was some issues of pesticides or, chemicals, farming chemicals that get into the soil, you're gonna be able to track that if you got a wider area to cover, right? Like what do you have, 250 day zone, 5 year zone? Like, there's lots of area to ensure that it doesn't infect or contaminate our water source. So we have that in place. We have all those mechanisms in place. I was out at the Milton Vale facility, and I can't remember the gentleman's name that oversees. Justin, what's his last name?
McEwen.
Great guy. But all the equipment that he had there for testing, so, I can understand that we have a great plan, but other than just the plan of how much area we need, all those test procedures, protocols for ensuring that the water is being tested, monitored, are in place, and you're saying they are.
Yep.
But they're in there as, sorry, Mr. Chair, they're in there as a mitigation for an existing activity that's happening, right? So if there is farming in that general area so that would suffice the continual testing to ensure that doesn't happen or capture it in advance of it. However, as a city, would we not be more inclined to wanna remove that possibility?
What, mean farms?
If we were buying land that was used to protect our well fields, and some of that land was being used for farming, say for instance, the way I interpreted what you said there was the farming can continue because we have the mechanisms in place
Testing.
to monitor and test. And maybe that's fine, but would we also not wanna look more towards eliminating that as even a possibility so that we don't have to put ourselves into the monitoring, testing realm
Right.
to ensure it doesn't happen. That's all I'm trying to, because we talked about, ever since I've been on council and been in this committee now for a little over 2 years, we've talked about the protection of the well fields for the safety of our water and everything, but to what degree, I guess, like I feel like we should be buying up that land. We've had the money in the budget for a couple of years, we haven't bought the land. But also what your comment made it appear like if we don't buy the land, we have mechanisms in place to manage it.
Correct.
So where do we wanna be? All in or all, or kind of monitoring? I'm thinking we should be,
We wanna put our water source or water inventory in the safest place that we can.
so I think that's
Continue to offer.
eliminating where we can, the possibilities of those risks where we don't have to monitor it, pay attention and hope that nothing comes about in those timeframes or the rings that you show there with the 25 or whatever,
250 days,
250
5 years,
day contamination. That's my point. I'm not
Absolutely.
saying that these mechanisms are not good to manage and monitor as well, but if we have an opportunity in various areas that you said you were negotiating some possibilities. I wanted to just make another comment on, you talked about the fair market value of property. And how does that assessment come about? Is that done through yourselves or is that done through professional, like is it done through real estate or how is the assessments of that done per acre or per size or whatever you're doing?
Absolutely, yeah, so that's not done internally, we do go out and seek a firm that is exactly what they do, that's their profession, land valuation, typically it involves, it could be a realtor, but they do a market scan of properties that had sold in recent history, if they can, in similar areas, similar condition, similar land use. They try to make it as close to apples to apples comparisons as they can. That way you're not trying to make assumptions. And they use those recent market sales and kind of make a projection of what things are. And they do provide typically an estimate per acre or per parcel. And that can be broken down per acre as well. But we do reach out to professionals, they come back and it does take a little bit of time to get that valuation. But it can be extremely valuable when we are seeking to purchase lands. Like if I may, I would just address that similar to Councilor Matart's comments is our testing and monitoring are they are, as much as they are proactive, it is a reactive stance to take on protection. If we purchase the lands, we limit what activities can happen on them. That is more proactive, whereas if we reforest them, not only is it gonna filter the water better, create more habitat for wildlife, create a better environment in that area, and that would increase the quality of our water. It does limit the instances because we have control of the lands, and it prevents something instead of catching it down the line. So I think it's a very proactive manner if we go out and seek particular parcels of land and try to limit the use on them.
So Josh, thank you for that, because that was precisely to my point. I should have maybe been more specific to that, but I think that's exactly what it is. It's taking more of that control and allowing us to do other things with that land to even strengthen the quality of our water and the protection of it. Like you said, reforesting it, there could be other environmental purposes that we may be able to use and tap into our environment sustainability department here on these lands and stuff. So love the idea of that, and anyway, something think about, but I think, that it's certainly gonna come at a cost, and we need to ensure that, whoever we're negotiating with, that we're doing in the best interest of the city, but also in fairness to those property owners. And I don't know who's all out there and how many people we're negotiating with, but anyways, thank you for that, so all my comments on that.
Mr. Chair,
You know,
if you go just to page 64, look at all the opinions there. All the land, that's all farmland. We were known as the million acre farm, we're down to what, 550,000 acres because of erosion, because of development and so forth. Again, Mr. Chair, and it's great that the Councillor Mattard is here because of his role with the Intergovernment Cooperation Committee Standing Committee, is that we've already sent, and this was, I think, penned by your director, Richard McCune, I don't know if you received a copy, but we should get a copy to the committee members, to ask the province to put moratoriums on the use of land around our well fields. Going out, whether it was 250 days, I think Richard topped it out at 250 days, maybe longer. That way, that cash issue of buying land, because you go to page 65, there's large swaths of land there that, again, require a lot of cash in the bank. If you like the chair and have, that cash available, not like myself,
I think that, there's a broader picture here.
Yeah.
But if we're looking at the most significant impact, which would be the closest lands within these circles, and then making our way out. I mean, I'm not sure, I'm not suggesting we're buying all this farmland all around these, outside of all of these circles here, because if we're looking within the most impactful area, which would be, I'd have to think what's right beside the well field, would that be the most impactful? And then working the further out, obviously, would be the less concerned. Maybe I'm wrong in that, but yeah. Anyways, there would be a big request here to be looking how far out we want to be doing that, but okay.
If I could just ask, Mr. Chair, if Richard or Josh could forward that letter that was sent off to Minister Boyce Thompson, who is Minister of Agriculture, about this moratorium on land use around our well fields. That'll just give you an idea that there are areas that he's already responsible under that ministry.
And like I said, Councilor Mattard had raised an issue. We've had $1 million to protect our well fields that we haven't tapped into. And, this is an opportunity to pick away at certain areas. So if we have a well field and they're spraying pesticides on the borderline of that property, and we have the ability to take that away, it would be prudent for us to do that. I mean, if we have 4 well fields here, it says fiscally responsible. So what's fiscally responsible? I know we've paid in excess of evaluation on different properties to secure that. You look at the Confederation Center, there's certain evaluations of land there, we've paid in excess for stuff. This is more serious. This is a well field protection of protecting our water for future generations. So if we can, protect what's around our well field, we don't have to buy 100 places. But somebody that's spraying pesticides on the border of these well fields, and we have an opportunity to reach out to these farmers and say, listen, what would you sell or could you sell? It's not all in 1 year. In the next number of years, if we have a plan to see if these people would sell us this land to protect the water. That's what we should be doing, in my opinion. At any cost, we can't, and to say it to our manager's defense, we have to be proactive rather than reactive, than sitting back and saying, well, things are in place that if a pesticide tractor turns over, we could detect it somewhere down the road. But if we have a buffer zone around these well fields that they won't be able to spray around them, that gives us some protection, right? In my opinion. But anyways, I mean, we had a great discussion about that here, and like I said, we have a certain amount of money in our budget that we've earmarked for this, but we refuse to use it. And it comes back to fiscally responsible. What is being fiscally responsible? You know, do you get it to protect it, or you negotiate over a certain amount, you know, of money? I know myself, if you wanted a building and it's only valued at 100,000, but I want it, I'm gonna pay 125,000 for it, right? And this is the same. If we want to be serious about it and protect our well fields, we have to pay a certain price.
So, Mr. Chair, if we go to 64, page 64, that green, what do we own? Do we own those PID numbers in and around, Josh, in around the well field? We do, right? 1925, 83, 13, do we own them already? Are they something that we should buy?
I'd have to confirm that for you,
If you
yeah.
could, and same with the others. I'm,
But-
I'm looking at the 250-day zone. That's the minimum, right? For the protection that we're looking for. It says legend 250 day zone.
Absolutely, yeah, that'd be the most crucial area, that obviously, if there was a significant contamination within the year, you would see that in the water. Yeah, that's the idea behind that zone, yep.
And again, just to clarify, Mr. Chair, the investment that we're making here is protecting a vital asset, water. To compare it to the Confederation Center and the investment into a major facility in the heart of the city, I think what we got back from that doesn't compare to what we're doing here. We're protecting our most crucial resource.
So we should be then, as a result of that, you know, looking to, I don't wanna say do that at all costs, but we should be looking to do that at, if we're not getting over this line for whatever reason, I'm making assumptions here, we're not getting over this line because we're not getting these negotiations completed. And it might be due to financial debates. So we need to figure out how do we get there so we can get that. We, you know, whether it's, we talked about fair market value. Well, fair market value is one thing, you know, a real estate agent determining the value of land around a well field. I don't know if that would be the person that I would be looking for that kind of valuation, but you said you had experts involved there. So, but also I think we need to take into consideration that, you know, there's a value for us having that as well. We may have to pay for that value too, which is then to remove that potential that's there. And if it could be, and like say, if it's that farming situation, so, you know, we gotta get somewhere. You know, I'd like to come here one time with a resolution that we bought a piece of property around the well fields. In the 2 years I've been here, we haven't done that. That's not a slight to you, Josh, or anything. That's not anything other than we gotta get there. So I know maybe that's probably what we'd be discussing later, but anyway, that's just my thing, and it's not, like, I know you're doing everything you can, I'm sure you would buy every piece of land you could tomorrow, it's not what your concern is, it's our concern of what we're gonna sign off on.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for a great discussion on that. How about introduction of new business?
Can I just make a point, if we are, I'm just looking here, introduction to, are we going into the closed session, because there is
Yeah,
another
we
item on
we
the
can
closed session?
discuss the first item. Communications.
Are we gonna delay it?
Well, do you want to?
No.
No, he was here last night.
I'll follow the chair.
Well, you can invite him. We left with him.
Not gonna get
Don't
into
stop
this
him
again,
now.
okay? We'd like to motion to move into a closed session as per section 119(1)(e) of the Municipal Government Act of PEI. 119(1)(e), a matter still under consideration on which council has not yet publicly announced a decision and about which discussion in public would likely prejudice a municipality's ability to carry out its negotiation, topics, communications, project, contract update. And we have an issue with quorum, so we'll just do that one thing here today. This we go into, moved by Mayor Brown, second by Councilor Tarrant, we'll go into a closed session, thank you. Hey, welcome back for the discussion and closed session, and we'd like a motion to adjourn the meeting. Moved by Mayor Brown, second by Councilor Mattar. Thank you very much.